Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Tullahoma. Welcome to those of you at church, welcome to those of you on Zoom, and welcome to those of you on live stream. We come together freely to share our journeys, to learn from each other, and to relish life. Open your minds to new ideas, set aside your concerns, and be in this time and this place. For our chalice lighting, Pastor, would you mind lighting the chalice? Thank you, ma'am. And hello, Sally. Where we find the darkness of ignorance, let us bring the light of reason. Where the darkness of despair prevails, may we share the light of hope. When we encounter the darkness of hate, let us shine the light of love. Thank you, ma'am. And announcements. Does anyone have any announcements? Jim's hand was first.
All right, a couple of announcements. Both related to retreats. The board is going to have a retreat scheduled for October 21. It's a Saturday, I guess, like 4 weeks out. We're going to be discussing the future status of the church. So it's kind of a half-day event where we'll just be able to brainstorm, talk. The other is our annual congregational retreat, which is scheduled for the first Saturday in November. I believe it's the 5th. It's out Tim's Ford. And we're looking for help organizing that. Carrie has agreed to take the lead on that, but she needs some help with people on a committee to work on that. And also, if you have an activity, something you want to contribute, please contact Carrie. So part of that retreat will be a congregational meeting discussion like we've usually done in the past. That'll probably be in the morning first thing to share with you what the board accomplished at the board retreat and then get your feedback and input on items. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other announcements? Oh my gosh. Chuck, I'm sorry. Thank you, I'm sorry, just drew a blank.
All right. Let's see, we are, the Wednesday night discussion group will meet as is customary on Wednesday night at 7:15 here at the church. That's after the Zen service from 6 to 7. We'll meet here. We'll also be on Zoom. We're discussing Peter Singer's book, Ethics in the Real World, going through it essay by essay. Sometimes we get through 2, sometimes we get through 1, sometimes we get completely distracted and don't get through any.
Yes.
But it's fun anyway, and there's usually snacks involved. So.
You're distracted, I don't believe that.
And then the second announcement, probably a lot of you are aware that this afternoon at Trinity Lutheran Church, Flag is having an event that I don't know much about, except that it involves a panel discussion in suicide awareness. And I'm planning to go as part of the reason I'm down here today. So the other part is sitting over there. But so after the service, anybody wants to go to lunch, we'll probably go to lunch somewhere. I'll hang around and eventually we'll make it over to Trinity. So.
Very glad to hear that you'll be attending that. Anyone else? Okay.
He had his hand up a minute ago.
Oh, sir, Gene did? I'm sorry, Gene. You're muted, sir.
Muted.
Jane,
You're muted, buddy. We can't hear you.
There you go.
Okay. I'm struggling with this computer as well. I met a guy named Joe who said he knows you very well. And the other announcement is I've got a flat tire.
Sorry to hear that, sir.
Oh, it's not that big a deal like that.
Keep it that way. Carrie.
It's newsletter time. Well, that's
No
about
pressure.
as much anybody, so.
No pressure,
If
but
somebody wants to send something to me, that would be lovely.
yes, Carrie
Just lovely.
definitely needs help with the wonderful work that she does on that newsletter, and I am more guilty than anyone in this congregation for not submitting things, so I will do my best here.
Thank you, dear.
Thank you. Okay, couple quick announcements for me. Number one, some of you here may or may not have noticed there's some trees with some yellow markers on there. Don't panic. We're just getting some estimates from some arborists to come look at those, so we're good, but I just wanted you to be aware that we're good. Also today is potluck after service. Hopefully you folks have remembered and brought some food.
Raise your hand if you have.
No, don't raise your hand and shame others. But we also collect donations for local charities, so please ask that you make a donation if possible. And for those not in attendance, you can also mail a donation to our P.O. Box. And I will also give out the other announcement so you have the address. Once I find it. If you want to donate to the work of the church, please send a check to UU Church of Tullahoma, P.O. Box 331, Tullahoma 37388. And if you want this to go towards the charity donation, please just note it in the note column, and wonderful Ms. Costa will take care of it from there. I believe Jim recently made an announcement that we are distributing checks to a couple different organizations, and I spoke with one Friday, and they are very appreciative of what they'll be receiving. So please keep up the good work. Okay, for our responsive reading, I'm going to do something a little different. I didn't know until the other day, and I would assume a lot of you don't know, that this upcoming Friday, September 28th, is declared National Good Neighbor Day. So National Good Neighbor Day was created in the early 1970s by Becky Matson of Lakeside, Montana. In 1978, President Jimmy Carter issued Proclamation 4601. As our nation struggles to build friendships among the peoples of this world, we are mindful that the noblest human concern is concern for others. Understanding, love, and respect build cohesive families and communities. The same bonds cement our nation and the nations of the world. For most of us, this sense of community is nurtured and expressed in our neighborhoods, where we give each other an opportunity to share and feel part of a larger family. I call upon the people of the United States and interested groups and organizations to observe such day with appropriate ceremonies and activities. And from the National Good Neighbor Day organization, a small quote that can help you out with this is, get to know your neighbors, host a block party, invite neighbors over for a barbecue, help a neighbor with a project, or go for a walk around the neighborhood. Be a good neighbor, because good neighbors make great neighborhoods. It starts with hello. And on that note, we will be going to our speaker today, which is Rabbi Rami Shapiro. And I am not going to butcher the pronunciation of his entire title, so what I have is Forgiving Yourself in Advance, and I'll let him fill in the rest if he chooses. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thanks, Dan. So I'm doing my bit for Good Neighbor Day. Hello. Hello. So this woman in Montana came up with that. Her neighbor's probably like 25 miles away.
Makes a good name.
Yeah. So that was sort of ironic, I thought, but okay. Very nice. So I don't know if everyone noticed at the end, but I gotta try to make a mental note. The Jason Foundation? Did you know that song? Mm-hmm. And then at the end, the guy who cuts the hair, is that a recent video? Is he still?
I'm under the impression he is still doing that. The video, I believe, is about 2, maybe 3 years old.
I gotta check that out. So it's something to keep in mind. Jason Foundation, if I got it right. I'm gonna look that up when I get back. All right, so good morning.
Good morning.
I'm probably the only Jewish person here, but assuming this is a universal idea, you're all in trouble. Because Yom Kippur starts tonight. I'm going to give you some background on all this stuff, but Yom Kippur starts tonight. And Yom Kippur is the end of the period called the Days of Awe, which is the High Holy Day period, when your fate is determined by God. Luckily for all of us, we don't believe in that God, but if we did, this could be scary. So one of the most famous prayers that Jews say at this time is made famous by Leonard Cohen. It's his song, who by fire, who by water. It's the prayer is who shall live and who shall die, who by fire, who by water. It goes through the whole thing. And the idea is you don't know what's going to happen to you during the year. And it starts out who shall live and who shall die, but then it's just a list of how you can die. And the idea is to sort of, it's like watching Fox News. Everything, which of course none of us do, but if you did, it scares the crap out of you because it's really like, oh my God, everything is horrible. Of course, watching MSNBC doesn't make me any happier, but still, it's this very dark thing. Are you going to die by drowning? Going to die by burning? There's no hope in this prayer until the end, when it says that you can sort of worm your way out of a bad decree through repentance, prayer, and charity. And then if there's a crawl down the bottom, it would be jasonfoundation.org. So there's three ways to get out of a bad decree in this traditional formulation. One is repentance. So repentance is like in the song, right? Most people don't change, but some people can. And so you could say, I'm going to change. Maybe you'll be one of the few that does. But my talk is about, what if you don't? Even there's a way out. And I'm going to give you that way out. Repentance. Prayer is, don't do it to me. Right? Please, please, please. And in the Jewish tradition, one of the ways you pray is you use your mom's name. Because the Jewish tradition says, God can't say no to your mom. In the Christian tradition, Catholic tradition, there's this wonderful mystic in the early 1700s named Louis de Montfort. I'm going to check my clock because I could talk about this stuff way over time. But Louis de Montfort was this French Catholic mystic. And he started along with, I think her name was Claire Louise, a nun. They started something called the Daughters of Wisdom. And it's an order of nuns that still exists. They're a global order of nuns. And they focus not on Jesus, but on Mary, for the same reason, that if you really want to get to God, you got to go through Mom. And so they pray to Mary. And in fact, I've been involved with the Daughters of Wisdom for decades. And in the place where I go, where I used to go every year at least once, Wisdom House in Litchfield, Connecticut, when you go into their chapel, it's Catholic, but there's no crucifix. There's a beautiful Mary statue that is placed center stage. The first time I went there, I asked Sister Rosemary, who ran the place, she's retired, where's Jesus? And she walked over to a little side table like you'd have next to your bed, a little bed table, and she opened the drawer and pulled out a tiny crucifix. She put it on there, and she said, we pull Jesus out when Father comes for Mass. Well, we're really not into Jesus. And we pray to Mary, because if you want to get to the Father, you got to go through Mom. So unlike what it says in John, no one gets to the Father except through me, their approach is no one gets to the Father except through she, right? So, this idea that the feminine is the way to forgiveness, the way to the divine, is a universal concept. So there are ways out. And of course, charity is another one. But let's talk about repentance. At this time of year, you're supposed to think back over to all the things you did that you wish you hadn't done, and you make, like New Year's in secular, you say, I'm going to do differently next year. Here are my goals, here's what I want to change, I'm going to be different next year. Maybe you will, maybe you won't, mostly you won't, but that's what you say to yourself. So the way you set this up in the Jewish framework is, and last weekend was the high hold, that was Rosh Hashanah, the New Year itself. You spend a month in preparation, and it's a beautiful month. It's called Slichot, I'm sorry. And you go around to everybody you know. Now in ancient times, it was like, I think it's called the Dunbar number. You basically live in a little village, you have 150 people that you know, right? So you went around to everyone you know, and you would say to them, there was a formula, if I've hurt you in any way, knowingly or unknowingly, advertently or inadvertently, I ask for your forgiveness. And these are people that you interact with throughout the year, and so you ask them, and they would ask you, but you would ask them, and they were supposed to say, I forgive you. You never say what you did. Right? You never say, if I've hurt you in any way, like when I, killed your dog accidentally, when I ran over it with my ox cart, that was you? You killed my dog? I'll never, you never tell them what you did, because that's not, you don't want to bring that up. So if I did anything, you ask for forgiveness, and then they're supposed to forgive you. If they don't forgive you, you can ask them again and again, 3 times. I think in the New Testament, someone says, how often do we have to forgive? Or I think it's 7 times 70 or something like that. Even though Jesus was a Jew, he was an extremist. Most Jews, 3 times. That's it. And if they don't forgive you the first time, you go back a second time, but you can bring pressure to bear. You can bring their mother, I suppose. But you can bring other neighbors, you can bring rabbis. Come on, forgive. Don't be, hard about this. But according to Jewish tradition, at the end of 3 times, if the other person still doesn't forgive you, Jewish tradition says, and then God takes note of that, takes whatever guilt you were carrying and transfers it to the person who won't forgive you. So you're forgiven, and that person carries the guilt. So you're free if you ask with sincerity, right? You ask sincerely to be forgiven. After 3 times, the guilt is washed away. So I thought it would be a good idea, because the period's coming to an end now, because it goes right through Yom Kippur. So you have an opportunity to do this, whether you're live streaming it, or you're on Zoom, or here in the church. This is a good opportunity to say this to people you know. Now, I don't know how you do it on Zoom or live streaming, but at least here in the church, you know each other. You could say this to one another. So I'm going to feed you the lines, and you can turn to people and say this to them. Well, when do it once, if they seem hesitant to forgive you for whatever, and don't fill in the blank, right? But if they hesitate to forgive you, you can go back 2 more times during the little break when we get some coffee and talk a minute. Okay, so here's the verbiage, so you can turn to one another. So, if I've hurt you in any way, knowingly or unknowingly, advertently or inadvertently, I ask for your forgiveness. All right. If you need some pressure, call me. So that's stuff that you've done to other people. But what I want to focus on is a prayer that Jews are going to say tonight. It's called, and you couldn't pronounce it, it's called Kol Nidre. Kol means all, Nidre means vows. And it's the weirdest prayer, maybe in any liturgy. It's a nullification of all vows that you might make. And it's a little confusing whether it's between now and next Yom Kippur, or vows that you made from last Yom Kippur to this Yom Kippur. Any vow that you made and didn't keep, you're saying it's null and void anyway. It doesn't count. Now, it's not a vow you made like you said to someone, hey, can I borrow some money and I promise to pay it back. It's not that kind of vow. It's a vow you made originally when it was created in the Middle Ages. It was a vow you made under duress. Most likely, and the history is a little obscure, but most likely it was a vow you made under penalty of death, and the vow was to convert to Christianity or Islam. That the state came to you as a Jew and said, we'd like you to become a Christian or a Muslim, and the enticement is you live. That's the carrot. And the stick is you die. And so most people, many people probably chose to die. I would probably choose to live. The most famous one I can think of is a guy named Shabtai Tzvi in the middle of the 1600s who thought he was the Messiah, had, according to Gershom Scholem, one of the greatest Jewish historians, had 75% of the world Jewry believing he was the Messiah. He was arrested by the Sultan in Turkey, taken before the Sultan, and given the opportunity to live as a Muslim or die as the Messiah. And he lived, but he gave up being a Jew and said, okay, Messiah, Shemaiah, I'm not, I'm alive. La ilaha illallah, because he's not stupid, and I probably would go the same route. I'd rather live as a Muslim or a Christian than die as a Jew, which is, you're not supposed to say that. You're supposed to die as a Jew, but I'm Reformed. So, I don't know what you guys would do. Would you die for Unitarianism or would you become a Catholic? I think if I were a Unitarian, I'd become a Catholic. I don't know why, but I think I would do it. In any case, back then, many people died rather than renounce their faith. But those who didn't took the vow and became Christian or became Muslim. And then at some point, many of them managed to escape. So many Jews who were forced to become Catholic managed to make it, let's say, to the Netherlands where they were allowed to be Jews. Jews weren't forced to become Catholics. And they wanted to revert to being Jewish. They didn't have to convert. Once a Jew, always a Jew. They could simply reclaim their Jewish heritage. But they felt this guilt over having renounced their Judaism. So wherever they went, wherever they managed to get to where they could be Jews again, the theory is, some historians believe, that the rabbis created this prayer that they could say, look, I took a vow to become a Christian under duress, but now I don't have to live by that vow, so it's null and void. Here's the original language for it. All vows, prohibitions, oaths, consecrations, and similar promises that we may vow, swear, consecrate, or prohibit upon ourselves from the previous day of atonement till this day of atonement, that we take upon ourselves for our benefit, namely, we live. Regarding all of them, we repudiate them. All of them are undone, abandoned, canceled, null and void, not in force, not in effect. Our vows are no longer vows, our prohibitions are no longer prohibitions, and our oaths are no longer oaths. These rabbis were lawyers. This is very legalese. But then it goes on and says, may all the people of Israel be forgiven, including all the strangers who live in our midst, all the people who aren't Jewish, who live in our community. For all people may be prone to such actions. You never know. Maybe you're not Jewish, but maybe you're a Muslim and you're forced to convert to Christianity. Or maybe you're a Christian and forced to convert to Islam. It doesn't matter. If you are forced to be who you're not, and you can get out of that, we're freeing you from all of the guilt from any of it. It was controversial in its day, and then the day passed. And yet we still say it. When that time passed, when it was we no longer had these forced conversions, rabbis tried to get rid of the prayer, but they couldn't because the people wanted it. There was something powerful about it. It's said in a language that no one really understands. Most of it's Aramaic. They hear it said. The tune is it's a medieval. I forgot now. Just went out of my head. Bach, I think, is the most famous composer. It's a cello tune, and it's chanted by a cantor 3 times. It's very, very beautiful. Anyone who's studies, this is what I've been told, if you're a professional, classical trained cellist, every cellist learns this, to play this melody, whether you're Jewish or not Jewish. It's just something you learn as part of your repertoire. And so it's very famous. And people go just to hear it. And there's something compelling about the melody, compelling about the idea that it stays part of the Jewish repertoire, even in synagogues that are so liberal that none of this makes any sense to the people in the pews. They don't think about the logic of it. There's something, I don't know if it's spiritually compelling or psychologically compelling, there's something very powerful about it that people don't want to give it up. My sense is that there is something incredibly liberating about the prayer that makes it timeless and always timely. And I want to talk about that and then invite you to engage in the prayer with me, a modern version of it, because I think it works for everybody. So let's talk about what kind of vows are we addressing. So clearly, I don't know what the dominant religion here in Tennessee is, but let's say it's Southern Baptist Convention. I've never had anyone no Southern Baptist has ever tried to force me to convert and become a Southern Baptist. I've had a lot of Mormons come to my house. Every Saturday I walk every day with my dog, and every Saturday when we get to the town square in Murfreesboro, there's Jehovah's Witnesses on every corner of the square, and we always stop, my dog and I. We'd stop, I talk to them. my dog just, I don't know if she's atheist or agnostic, but she wants nothing to do with them unless they have biscuits, and they never do. But so, we've talked to them. Yesterday we were having a conversation, and there was another person walked by with a dog who just really growled and barked at them, and they said, "Wow, what is wrong?" And I explained to them that dog was a Seventh-day Adventist. But we talked to the Jehovah's Witness. They never, they come to my house sometimes, but they've never tried to force me to convert. They invite me to become a Jehovah's Witness, but they never force me. No one's ever forced me to do anything religiously. It's a free country for another few months. So why this prayer? What good is it? But if we take it out of that historical context, where someone puts a sword to our neck or a gun to our head and says, do X, and we put it into a more psychological context, and think of the oaths and vows you make to yourself, because it says, we promise, that all vows, prohibitions, oaths, consecrations, similar promises that we may vow, swear, consecrate, or prohibit upon ourselves. So we take it literally, we put it upon ourselves, these prohibitions upon ourselves. If you think of it in terms of things that we just put upon ourselves, that we can't keep, but at the time we think we can. Most people can't change, but some people do. But we all try. We say, okay, I'm going to do this. So I don't know what you do at New Year's, in the January New Year's, but I always have New Year's resolutions that I make on January 1 and break on January 2. And the same thing happens with Rosh Hashanah. So this is what I'm going to do. So during COVID, I stopped going to the gym, but I never gave up my gym membership. And right after COVID, well, you know, we're not after COVID, but when things opened up again, I promised to go back to the gym. I haven't gone yet. But then Rosh Hashanah came and I said, okay, right after Rosh Hashanah, which was a few days ago, it ended, I'm going back to the gym. Right after Yom Kippur, I am going back to the gym. So I keep paying the monthly membership, but I have yet to go. So my plan is to go. So Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur starts tonight, and it goes through tomorrow. So Tuesday, my plan is to go back to the gym. But I'm going to say this prayer tonight, just in case Wednesday comes and I still haven't gone there. So I make these promises. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to lose 20 pounds this year. I'm going to do X, Y, or Z, whatever it's going to be. And I don't do it. I intend to do it. I mean to do it. My heart's in the right place. But it's an emotional response and not something I'm actually going to do. On my podcast, I'll put a plug in for the podcast, Spirituality and Health Podcast with Rabbi Rami, available wherever you get your podcasts. But on my podcast, the last two interviews that I've had with two doctors, Dr. Rosemarin and Dr. Rosenthal, they're writing about different things. One's writing about anxiety, one's writing about seasonal affective disorder. They both relied heavily on cognitive behavioral therapy, which I knew about decades ago, but I didn't know was still fashionable. But anyway, they write about cognitive behavioral therapy, at the heart of which is the notion that our response to events isn't determined by our feelings, but by our beliefs. So we believe X about an event, and our belief about the event triggers feelings and thoughts about the event. It's not the event itself, it's our beliefs about the event. So I go to the gym or I don't go to the gym, but it's my belief about I should have gone to the gym, or why didn't I go to the gym, or why I need to go to the gym, that causes a whole spiral of feelings of guilt and whatever it is about my behavior. What Kol Nidre does is it frees you from that from the past, but then somewhere in the history of Kol Nidre, the language expanded to include the future. So it now says, all the prohibitions, blah, 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 from the previous Day of Atonement to this Day of Atonement. And then and this has been a long time, it's been amended. And from this Yom Kippur, this Day of Atonement, to the next. So you're freeing yourself from everything you promised and you didn't do. Personal vows to yourself. And everything you're gonna promise to yourself and won't do. You're saying in advance, I know I'm gonna say something stupid to myself. And then I'm not gonna do it. So I'm just gonna say to myself, I could say to myself, don't make those vows. But that's a promise I'm not going to keep either. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say, you're going to do it. I know you're going to do it. I'm talking to myself. I know you're going to do it. You're going to do it. And we're going to say, there you, like Ronald Reagan, well, there he goes again. And you're just going to have to live with the fact that you do these things. Don't go nuts about it. Don't have a belief about it. Don't end up triggering feelings and thoughts about it. It's just what we do as people. And this prayer simply says, relax. You did it before, you're going to do it again, don't worry about it. If you actually change for the better, good for you. But if you end up making these promises that you can't keep, don't worry about it. Now, why does that matter? So, what I liked about Jason's song, I didn't know it was going to work, Jason, and it wasn't his song, but Jason's story. is my experience in recovery, because I guess he's in 12-step recovery, right? My experience in recovery is when you realize your recovery is not under your control, right? You can understand that in a million different ways, but for me, and I don't like the term higher power, but greater power speaks to me. Higher power is like a god, and I'm not into that. But greater power means you're part of something larger than yourself, and if you can surrender, well, you can't. But but it's a longer conversation, and I wrote a whole book about it, which you can buy at local bookstore. When you recognize that you're part of something greater, the something greater can free you from your addiction. But when you recognize you don't have the control over the addiction, that you can't control these, all the things that happen to you, it frees you to just sort of go with the flow. And going with the flow allows you not to react addictively. So I'll give you a concrete example. So my addiction is compulsive overeating. So I sit in my office at home, I work at home. And let's just pretend this is my office, and I sit like this, and my living room is facing me that way, the outdoors is that way, and this way is the kitchen, to my left. And if I turn to my left, there's the refrigerator. And I don't know if this is true, but I think my wife has a little recording in the refrigerator that constantly says, "There's food, come and get it." I don't know if she does that or not. I'd like to blame her, but I think I'm projecting. But anyway, all throughout the day, I'm drawn to the refrigerator. I don't know if you do this, but I do this. I get up, I walk over, I open the refrigerator, I just stare at it. There's nothing in there I want. I just stare in there. And I always find something to eat, but I'm not hungry. That's what I do. So I'm looking in there, and then there's a voice that's in me that says, "Oh, eat this." And there's another voice that says, "No, don't eat that. Don't eat any of this. You're not even hungry." And the two voices start to argue. I can't control either one of them, and that's one of the things I learned in recovery, is I can't control either voice. They're just battling it out. If I try to take sides with the good voice, I always want to side with the good voice. It doesn't matter. I always lose. The only way to shut them up is to eat something. Because then the voice that says eat says, "I know, I win," and it's quiet and we eat. And the other voice just, wimps out and just, crawls away. But if I just say, I have no power over the argument, then I can say, well, you guys just argue it out. And then I walk away and I go back to my desk. I don't eat, and they're just babbling, and I'm not listening. I look at Kol Nidre the same way. It's like saying, I have no control over these stupid promises I'm going to make to myself. So I'm just going to make them. But it's just like the noises in my head. I'm going to let it happen, but I'm not going to take it seriously. I'm not going to try to live up to them. If I do, and it makes sense to live up to them, and I do, okay. And if I don't, okay. Because I didn't have control over making them, and I don't have control over living up to them. So I'm just going to let them bubble up like all the other noise in my head. And I'm not going to hold myself accountable. If I make a promise to you, that's something else. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, that's when I go to you and say, if I've hurt you in any way. If it's a promise I made to myself, just don't go nuts over it. If I do that for the past, if I do that for the future, the idea is I'm free from the madness of my mind. I can just let it go. I don't know what you do on the Wednesday night Zen group, but part of my Zen training was to just watch the noise. It's just static, and you don't get involved in the drama of it. And that's what I'm talking about here. This prayer really just says, pay attention, don't pay attention, but it's just static, it's just noise. You can observe it, but don't get engaged with it. And that's the liberation of Kol Nidre. You're forgiving yourself from the madness that's intrinsic to the mind. And with that forgiveness comes a liberation from it. Not an ending of it, just being free from it. And hopefully that makes sense. So what I'm going to do, and you don't have to do this, but if you don't do it, you should ask me for forgiveness next year. I'm going to feed you not the long medieval version. I'm going to give you a modern rendition of the prayer. Again, line by line, and I'll invite you to say it as a way of setting yourself up for this liberation from all the madness of your mind. Okay? And then that'll bring us to a close. Okay. All vows, oaths, and beliefs made or held by me during the past year and rooted in understandings of reality I now know to be false and misleading are undone, abandoned, canceled, null and void. From this Yom Kippur unto the next. I will do my best to continually free myself. From all notions that inhibit me. From being a blessing to all the families of the earth. And as we say in Masonry, so mote it be. Thank you.
That was absolutely phenomenal. I am looking forward to talk back, which will start at 11 o'clock. So for our closing hymn, I'm going to invite you to remain seated rather than our typical hymn where you guys will join. And I'd like to give you a different rendition. As we, this group who have been coming together in a safe place amongst friends, common beliefs, with different experiences, we, a united group. As we leave this friendly place, this place that we have gathered for 60 years, a place of love and hope. May love give light to every face. May the love and the knowledge and the information that you learn in these lessons fill you with joy and the spirit of helping your community. May the kindness which we learn, again, the lessons that we have learned here today, as we have for the last 60 years, may light our hearts until we return. Keep it in your hearts. Share it with the community as you go forward. And until we can meet again and have these blessed experiences a week from